Welcome to Wisdom from the Aerial View, the podcast for those who wish to learn how to crush their anxiety and find meaning and purpose in their lives. And that's what I have found in you. Good morning, good afternoon, Dr. Klein. Mark, how are you?
Great, Enid, and how are you today?
I am really good today, which is kind of a good thing. You know, one of the things that you and I do, we talk about what the theme of the show should be and whatever. And I suggested something from our last show that I really wanted to talk about because it's near and dear to my heart. I want to talk about breaking bread. As you know, I've been in the anti-hunger world now for, almost 40 years. And breaking bread has been a large part of it. There's always, you always read quotes about it. And one of them I've always kept, it said, if we don't learn to break bread with each other, there'll come a day when none of us will have any bread to break. Breaking bread is a good one. It is, isn't it? And breaking bread is a concept that's as old as the Bible. Nothing new. American slaves sang, "Let us break bread together," during the time of the Underground Railroad, as a form of telling their friends that this is the time to escape. So, I mean, it has been something that's been with us for a long, long time. And there's so much meaning to it. And I wanted to talk about it today and what are your thoughts about breaking bread? What are your thoughts?
Well, I want to hear usually you start out and then you toss it to me. But in this case, because you are the hunger expert, and this was something that appealed to you for a particular reason.
It did.
I think you should take the lead today and explain to me and our listeners why this struck you, why this is so important to you. Not so much feeding people, it's obviously, but why this whole idea is so important to you and you wanted to spend this episode talking about it.
I did for a lot of reasons. One of the things that I do now, I volunteer at a senior center, which gives me great pleasure. And one of the things that is marvelous about senior centers, there are about 11,000 of them in the United States. And if you've seen one senior center, you've seen one senior center. They're all different. Each one has its own personality and each one has its own thing that it does, its own vibe, if you will, a collective vibe. But one of the things that you notice when you go to the senior center that has food, not all of them do, when they do, it's called congregate dining, where people congregate. They congregate to eat together, to break bread together. And that's the one overriding thing that they do together. They share a meal. They share bread. They're not relatives, although some of them bring a spouse, but they come together to this communal dining site to share a meal. And when they're sharing that meal, they're sharing the camaraderie. They're sharing the joy. They're sharing the love of what it means to sit down and talk to someone. You might go to a senior center where you've got people who are male and female, white and black and Hispanic and Asian, also Native Americans. And that's the beauty of it. They all come together, bringing their own cultures with them, and they break bread. And often at the senior center, we have the one that I'm working with right now. They have a bunch of Ethiopian folks who bring in their own bread that they make and they share it with everybody. So that's the real breaking bread. And it's important to me because it means so much. It means that we can all get along by breaking bread, by having a conversation during a meal. I also read an article. Again, I always do these things with articles, but this one struck me too. It takes place in Senegal. It says, in Senegal, people do not make light of lunchtime. Children rush home from school. Office workers head home too. Teachers and bosses don't mind. They need to be home for lunch with their families as well. On average, people eat meals with family or friends almost 12 times a week, more than anywhere else in the world. Gambia, Malaysia, and Paraguay are tied for second place, with people in these locations eating together 11 times a week. Can you imagine? In the United States, on the other hand, Americans are generally spending less and less time eating meals with others. For Americans, dining alone has increased in every age group, especially among younger people. And that gets back to the thing that you're so interested in about getting kids more engaged. So that's why it strikes me that if we break bread together, we'd be better off as a society. That's why I wanted to talk about it.
Well, I have a lot of things to say. Let me just say the first thing, when you just talked about how many times you have meals together, how important lunch is. So you've probably heard me say that I love lunch. Something I don't. I do. I love lunch. Now, one of the reasons I love lunch is what you're referring to. So in my practice, my medical practice, we had multiple different sites around the Washington, D.C. area where we both are. And our largest site was downtown DC, and that was the one that I was in charge of. And I'd have 60 employees. Most days I'd have 7 or 8 doctors. And, my job was to administer that part of the organization, which I loved. As you know, I love my employees. I still do. I miss them. And when I see them, I'm always thrilled. And what I did when I took over many years ago is I changed the patient's schedule so that there was a defined break in the day. So rather than seeing patients from 7 or 7:15 in the morning, which is what we did up until 5, because this is an outpatient facility, it's not a hospital, I created a permanent break between 12 and 1. Now, that doesn't mean we didn't see any patients. We did. If patients had walked in for an emergency x-ray or something, we'd see them. But it gave the doctors a period of time to be able to be together, to talk, to share, to laugh. So we had a little tiny conference room. And in that conference room, we had a table and maybe 4 or 5 chairs. And so we'd bring more chairs in over lunch. So everybody, if there were 8 people there, we could all fit in there. And we'd sit in there and we'd eat. And sometimes some people would bring their lunch. A lot of times we'd run outside and grab something and run back in again. I would not insist, but I would encourage people to come and have lunch together. Well, we would laugh. We would share. Sometimes there were professional things we talk about, but most of the time we weren't talking about healthcare or patients or technology or whatever. We were talking mostly about stuff that normal people talk about and laughing. I was in tears laughing so hard sometimes because we are social creatures. Now, this is a really interesting point I want to spend a couple of minutes on, if you don't mind. We say, humans are social creatures, and that's why we want to break bread together. That's why we want to eat together, spend time together. Okay. But that's only at one level. So the next question, I'm going to ask is this. Well, why are we social creatures? Why are we made this way? I'm going to digress a little science here for a second, talk about why it's important to delve into the next level of explanation of things. So we know that the sky is blue and certain things are red and certain things are green. And why is it do we see those colors? Because what happens is the color that we see is actually the only one that isn't absorbed. It's reflected back to us. And colors represent energy levels, their frequencies. So a frequency like a radio frequency or any kind of sound has frequency. Light has frequency too. It's related to its energy. We don't have to worry about that. But anyway, every color is related to a specific frequency, which means it's related to a specific energy. So when light goes into a structure which is made of atoms, and atoms are made of electrons and protons and neutrons, the electrons actually are the most important part because the energy level of an electron determines what it's going to absorb. Okay, that's enough physics. The point is, there is an explanation of why we see colors. It has to do with frequencies and energies and so on. So when I look at something like, why are we social creatures? I have to take it to the next level. Why are we social creatures? What is it about humans that make us social? Okay, well, on a large scale, we need to help each other. We used to need to hunt together and pick berries together, nuts and fruits, whatever. Maybe. I'm sure that's part of it, but it's probably not all of it. Getting back to why we're here, what's our purpose in life, to make this evolution from selfish to selfless, from inward to outward focus, to help other people. Well, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about getting together and being with each other and listening to each other and sharing with each other. And this expands our soul. It expands who we are. So the idea of breaking bread is really a statement that, hey, we need each other because without each other, we cannot fulfill our mission. Then our mission falls apart. And the problem we're having in our society now, and you eloquently stated, is that younger people especially are eating alone. People are spending time alone. You have zero chance of fulfilling your mission and reaching fulfillment, meaning, purpose, and happiness being alone in your life. It's just a losing proposition. So that's just why we have to focus on doing the things you're talking about, bringing people together at senior centers or teenagers or 20-year-olds and so on. That's what we have to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely true. There was a book written called Bowling Alone. We ought to write one called Eating Alone.
I read that.
It's right. But it's not healthy to be by yourself all the time. And if we can share even a meal. Now, I mean, obviously, we have hunger in America. We have hunger all over the world. And we have too much. And there is a cure for that disease of hunger. And of course, we need the courage to really, there's enough food in this country to feed every man, woman, and child. And yet we have hunger. But besides that, talking about just a piece of bread to share that. I mean, bread, when you need the bread is a very physical thing. To make bread is a very physical, kneading the dough and all of that. So it gets back to another thing we talked about, and I think it was in the last show. It was about touch. And I think that's what breaking bread is. We're touching one another. We might not touch them physically. We do touch them emotionally when we break bread together. I'll invite everybody who listens to go visit a senior center, because most communities have them, and go see what it's like. Go see the people who have been our fathers and mothers and grandmothers and grandfathers, and now us, who go to these places. Why does a senior go to a senior center? Most of the time they go not for the food, they go because they're lonely. They go because they're isolated. The food just happens to be part of it, but all of a sudden it opens up something else. A new world has opened up. And breaking bread is really important. There's another quote I always loved. It was, it's hard to remain enemies when you've broken bread together. I can't really be your enemy if I break bread together. You always talk about talking to other people who have different political persuasions. You and I think differently. And yet, if we sat and talk about it over a meal, we might really come to the conclusion that, you know what? You have your opinion, I have mine, but I still love you. You know?
Well, so in terms of yes, the reason I think going to a senior center is a great idea, but it's not just seniors, right? It's
sure,
everybody is experiencing the same phenomenon. They know there's some reason that they are supposed to be with other people. They sense it, they feel it. Meals are perfect because as human beings, we do need calories. We do need to make energy, and we get energy from food. So we have to eat. It's a perfect time to be together. So the idea of breaking bread to me is a metaphor of saying, okay, it's an excuse to get together. It's an excuse to be together. So yes. when you and I were growing up, I'm pretty sure we had dinner with our families most nights, right? As most people in our communities did. Some in those days, mostly fathers might have worked late, whatever, but most families ate together. Is that correct in your situation?
Yeah, we certainly did. Like it or not,
so did mine.
Yes.
Like it or not. But the interesting thing about it is that you are forced to be together. You are forced to spend time together. And you're right. It is very difficult to dislike somebody when you're sitting in front of them having a meal, which is why in this era of social media, of X and especially in all those platforms, Blue Sky, whatever, where people can rail against their political opponents. Well, try doing that if you're sitting at a table with them. You're probably not going to do that. Now, I'm not saying you won't get into an argument. It's funny. You and I, you laugh about the fact we have different political positions. We really don't. My political position is irrelevant in the sense that I'm interested in everybody's, and I feel required to listen to everybody's. And I know that if we don't, we won't be breaking bread, and we won't be getting along, and we will be screaming and yelling at each other. So I don't really care what somebody's political persuasion is, as much as I want them to entertain the possibility that A, they could be wrong, that B, that the person on the other side may have a point. And either way, they're human beings and they're entitled to their opinion. And the more we spend time together and break bread together, even if it's about politics, we're less likely to fight with each other. So I think your point about bringing us together through food in this sense, whatever works, and food is perfect. I agree with you.
Yeah. The one thing, though, you have to remember nowadays, if you see people sitting around, you could have a family seated around a table, but they have their iPhones with them. And some of them might be digging into a meatloaf, and at the same time, they're on Twitter. And the mother and the father, whoever, is okay. We're immune to that. We're almost to the point where we are immune to these little things that we carry around with us as though they are another appendage. We have 2 arms, 2 legs, and an iPhone. Everybody's got one.
So I have a little slightly different opinion on that.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. So my youngest son is still, he's in graduate school, so he's still home intermittently. He happens to be home now for winter break. And of course I love it because we get to sit around and we do eat together. And sometimes Sam will come up about a question that we're talking about. And what's the answer to the question? It's probably, some kind of fact-based question. And so one of us might pull, not him, never him. It's either my wife or I will pull out the phone and say, okay, Siri, what's the answer to this question, right? So as long as it's used in a context of a conversation, that's no problem. The problem is when each person is looking at their own phone or iPad and not talking to each other. That's where the danger is, right? That's what you don't want. So I think you have to set up in this country, we need to change the paradigm of community in the sense that the baseline should be, we need to be together. Baseline should not be, I'm by myself. I'm going to eat alone. I'm going to do what I want. I'll watch what I want by myself. I'll scroll through Instagram by myself. That's what we have to change. So all these technology tools, the phones, the computers, the iPads, sure, they're a potential problem, right? But I think the problem goes deeper. The problem is not just the technology. The problem is the way we look at our role in this world. And this is why you and I spend all this time talking about this, that our role in this world is not to be alone. It is to make that evolution, to help other people. And how do we know this is true? I tell people this all the time. They go, okay, big shot. You're so smart, which I'm not, by the way. I know a million people smarter than me. I always have. Actually, going back when we were in schooling, and I know a lot of people are always a lot smarter than me. But here's how
one of them wasn't me. Next, keep going. Yeah.
So how do I know this is true? Because the thing we've talked about, the thing that gives you the greatest joy in life is when you successfully help another person. It like lights you up. It's the cool, which is why I remember we interviewed Dr. Reiner and he said he and his staff at the hospital go to a food bank once a year, generally around Thanksgiving. They make 1,000 lunches and he feels like $1 million. And this is a guy who spends his life literally saving lives, right? Every day he must save, or saving maybe a little much, but basically preventing people from dying at least several times a week, right? A week. He's doing it all the time. Sometimes he does it twice in a night. So, and yet here he is thrilled to be able to make sandwiches at a food bank. So what does that tell you? It tells you that there's a source of joy in our lives. The greatest source of joy is helping other people, no matter whether it's, preventing somebody from dying for a heart attack or making them a sandwich. It's that sense that we're helping others. That's how we know that's why we're here. It's not complicated. Nothing makes you feel that way. I know. Your Buffalo Bills are going to play football today and you'll feel great when they win.
I hope so, yes.
But you feel greater. You have felt greater every time you've helped all these people in your life, which you have done consistently for all these years. That's how we know that's why we're here. That's how we know that's the point. And things like meals, anything that can bring us together is the key. So it's not so much the technology that's killing us. It's just, which is not helping. Believe me, I'm not disputing that, but it's not the problem, the major problem. The major problem is we've lost sight of why we're here, what our responsibility is in our lives, this evolution we need to make, and how we fulfill that obligation through caring for and loving other people. That's the key. So that's what we have to get back to. Once we get back to that, the technology will become just an appendage, just something we use, but it won't be the focus. The problem is we've lost the main focus on why we're here and what we're supposed to do.
Well, there are a couple of things. First of all, it interests me that you have your phone with you at the dinner table. I think that's kind of interesting. It's kind of telling. But the other thing I think that the technology has led us down a path of we don't have to be smart anymore because Siri's going to be smarter than we are and can tell us the answers. And so we don't have to really think as much. We can ask Siri for the answer. So there's that. The other thing that I think is interesting, and I love Dr. Reiner. He's now become one of my heroes. I just do. I think he's fantastic. And when he did talk to us about going to the food bank once a year, and I love that. What I'd love to say to them, go twice a year. You don't only have to go during Thanksgiving. Go another time. Go see. I mean, we have a tendency in this country, and I love it, and I love the idea that we're very philanthropic and we care about charities. But unfortunately, we usually care about them once a year. But hunger doesn't stop after Thanksgiving. They keep going. So and you're right. That is the purpose. That is meaning. Does give us purpose. It does give us meaning, but it's more than just once a year. And I would hope that people would say, maybe I ought to do it more than once. We all have busy lives. We all have a lot of things to do. We have a lot on our plates. No pun intended. But it would be, and maybe that's why that is a lot on our plate. But maybe that is something we ought to think about, doing it more than once. Community service. I hate to make, I like it that it's voluntary. I don't want to make anybody have to do it because then it becomes a chore. But being there for your community and being there for the people who live in your community is really the greater purpose. I think that's really what our meaning is, to be there for those people in our community who might need our help, not just once a year, but maybe more than once a year.
Oh, for sure. I think I've told you this. I mean, I, like most people, like you mentioned, this country, give money for charity regularly. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, this is before you and I actually ever talked about this. This is going on for many, many years. I always put food charities at the top of the list. I'm not sure why. I mean, maybe it's because it was obvious that where the money was going to go. And so I just set up these accounts, been going on forever, where I pay a certain amount every month. You've been in the nonprofits. Every month they charge my credit card a certain amount. And the ones that I do that for are food charities. Because I think something very well, and most of us don't, is that because most of us don't work around hungry. We have plenty of food. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to think about those who don't, but I do enough to say that, okay, if I can just automatically give these these charities, these institutions, the wherewithal to buy the food and prepare the food that they need. Okay. It's not the same as going to a food bank. I get it.
No, but it's good. No, it's good. We need the money too. Money's good.
Right.
We can't have food. We can't buy. We have to purchase the food to serve. So yes, please donate. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is food is a very fundamental thing that's easy for people to wrap their heads around. But we're not really talking about food today. We're talking more about using food as a vehicle to get people together. Although I'm looking at your face, people can't see it, but you are thinking about food. Are you hungry?
As a matter of fact, I'm not. I'm not usually hungry, but yeah.
No, you're never hungry.
No, I'm never hungry.
Yeah. Well, it's because you weigh like 12 pounds, but most people get hungry. But I think, to me, which is why I'm glad you brought this up today, is this is something we've been talking about repeatedly, is this idea of getting people back together, getting people in a community. And, I was listening to Jonathan Haidt. He's a NYU professor who wrote the book, what's the name of the book? About using phones and kids on phones and social media, and how that has really hurt young people in our country. Oh, The Anxious Generation. There you go. That's what it's called. That was his latest book. He's written a bunch of books. Very, he's been on everything. You've seen him recently, I'm sure. And I actually watched another interview with him just yesterday, I believe. And he talks obviously a lot about the technology and how that is negatively affected, especially young girls, but all younger generations. And like I said, I don't dispute that he's got a point. But there was another article written in the Free Press by a guy named Tyler Cowen. I don't know either of these gentlemen, but Tyler Cowen and Jonathan Haidt brought him up and talked about how Tyler Cowen said, well, it's not just the technology. And that I completely agree with, right? We are not a victim to this technology. We are able to overcome it if we keep our focus on getting together, on this idea of community, of sharing, of stopping being alone. I'll give you an example. Let's say that 5 teenagers are sitting in a room looking at one screen. Mm-hmm. Whether it be TikTok or Instagram or something, all 5 are sitting looking at the same screen. And what would they be doing? They'd be laughing. They'd be making fun of what they see. Then they'd make fun of each other. They'd have this camaraderie. They'd have this community. But there's a screen there. Screen wouldn't be the problem. I'd be fine with that, unless it was, just all porn or something terrible. But assuming it was just mostly silly cat videos or whatever it is, I'd be fine with that. 5 kids sharing time together, laughing, interacting, teasing each other, whatever. It's not the screen. It's the lack of community. That's where the focus has to be. Now, I agree, the screens make it easy to be by yourself, no doubt about it. A teenager, an adult, anybody can sit and scroll through these social media feeds for literally hours on end. They do. I don't know how they do it, but they do. We have the numbers. So it helps do that. But if we got those people in the room and let them do it, I would be much less upset and we would have much less problems in our community. So this is where we need to focus, getting people together.
I agree. I totally agree. One of the things that we're going to talk about in an upcoming podcast is kind of relevant to all this. It's about philanthropy. And how does philanthropy play into all of this? I think it does. There's a huge role in our country about giving, taking, but giving. And that's what philanthropy is. It's giving to someone else. It's giving to someone to do two things. One, to make that other person better or that other entity better, and to make you feel really good. I know we're going to talk to somebody who's a great philanthropist, and I think it's important. And I think it belongs in the conversation that we have, because it's all about purpose. What is our purpose? And our purpose should be to give, and that's why you give on a monthly basis to charities, and thank you for doing it. I wish my charity you were giving to, but
I do give to your charity.
I know. My nonprofit loves you. Yeah.
But the point is, that is why we're here.
Yes.
That is why philanthropy is so. And we always say this is the most generous country in the world. We give more money than anybody. By far, nobody's even close on individual level and collectively, right? So. And why do we do that? Because people get that sense. You feel good when you do it. I mean, you're right. We need to spread it out during the year, but you feel good. This is how we know that's why we're here. This is, when I talk to people about this, I say, look, you don't have to take my word for it. Just go out and live your life and record when you're the happiest. And when you help somebody change a tire, help them with a homework problem, they drop their grocery bag in the supermarket and you pick it up and you help this person out the door. You always feel great. 100% of the time you feel great. Okay. That's like God knocking you over the head and saying, it's not that complicated. You really want to be happy? Yeah. Go help other people. This is quite simple. And the proof is in the pudding, as we like to say, right? That's how we see it. One last thing about philanthropy, by the way, this is off topic a little bit, but it's one of those things that annoys me a bit. You've read all these articles about how billionaires are the worst people on the planet. And it's a scourge of the United States and the world. And it's just the worst thing ever. And then you hear like a guy like Michael Dell just gave like $8.5 billion to fund savings accounts for kids in lower income areas. I think he was giving him like hundreds of dollars. I don't forget how much, but it's something like that. $8.5 billion. And then there was another, I forget who it was who just joined in. It was another, Ray Dalio, I think also said that. So Michael Dell started this thing. Now Michael Dell's got a lot of money. Right. He built a business out of nothing. He's a self-made man. He's a really good guy. He doesn't have to give away $8.5 billion. Nobody says you have to do it. Why is he doing it? Because he knows it's the right thing to do and it makes him feel great. Right. And this is why, Andrew Carnegie started the libraries in this country. And we don't have billionaires. We don't have a lot of stuff. I'm not saying billionaires don't have their own downsides, but without billionaires, we'd lack a lot in this country. So before we start criticizing people,
there's no question.
These are people who have worked hard. Most of them have earned it legitimately. Some probably not, of course. But now they want to turn around and make the world a better place. Why would you argue with that, right?
Yeah. No, I don't think you do. I think we need them. I agree with you, and I applaud them. It's very, very important. Oh my goodness, we're running out of. Look at this. This time goes so fast. Look at that. So I want to say my final word, and it's I have this thing about Anthony Bourdain. I loved him. He was an amazing man, and he died way too soon by his own hand. But he said something that has always struck me. He said, food may not be the answer to world peace, but it's a start. I love that because it's true. I'll let you have the final word, or let Anthony Bourdain have the final word. But I think this was an important conversation, and I think I love breaking bread with you, Dr. Klein. I
love breaking bread with you. I think about Jose Andres, who's quite a guy, who is another amazing guy who has fed countless people, millions upon millions of people by now. So yes, I think food is important. What you've done for many years, Enid, is fantastic. And I know you don't want any applause or praise, but you deserve it.
Nope.
But I think food, to just sum it up, food is a mechanism by which we can sit down and spend time together and realize that we're really mostly all the same and we want the same things.
Yes, we do. tell everybody where they can write to us, where they can contact us.
Question, you can send an email to question@wisdomfromtheaerialview.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you all for listening. Thank you again, Enid, for another great conversation. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, my friend. Peace.